Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, City Clubs Thriving, Not Just Surviving. It's great to have all of you here with us today. We've got a large group. I'm Henry Wallmeyer, President and CEO of the National Club Association, and I look forward to being your moderator for what we think is going to be an extremely interesting and informative webinar. We've got an incredible group of industry experts and a panel of extraordinary general managers who will share their insights on the challenges that city clubs are facing today and address how to reposition themselves so that clubs can better serve their current and future members. So let's take a look at what we're going to cover today. You'll hear about how the club world is changing, and especially how city clubs must change with it to be successful. You'll hear about the importance of the partnership between the COO and the board. You'll hear about how what your club financials tell you and their importance. And then we're going to have a roundtable of city club managers on what they are doing now and what they are planning for. And then we will conclude today with an open question and answer segment. We'll bring all the presenters and panelists back for this, and I invite you to submit your questions in the question box, and we'll get to as many as time permits. They can be submitted at any time during the webinar, but we will wait until the end to answer them to make sure that we have time to get to all the sessions. And one thing that I will say is that we will send you a recording of this webinar and the slides afterwards, so that don't have to worry about asking that question. And so our presenters today are Frank and Bill from Mcmahon Group. We've got Tom and Ted from Kopplin, Kuebler, and Wallace, and Ray from Club Benchmarking. And our general manager panel will be John Dorman of the University Club New York, Jeff Mcfadden of the Union League in Philadelphia, whose birthday is today, we just found out, and Matthew Allnett of the Jonathan Club in Los Angeles. And these three gentlemen together have more than 50 years experience managing city clubs. It's now my pleasure to introduce Bill McMahon Sr., who will get us going talking about today's City Club.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Henry. And this is a terrific subject, I believe, someone that talking about today's City Club, but also going into tomorrow, which I think is very important. I kind of come from this in a very different way as a past president, board member of the Racket Club here in St. Louis for the last X number of years, but 9 years straight, and serving 3 years of those as president, and also a member of the 5 other city clubs in the St. Louis area over time, most of which are no longer here. And it's interesting that in that service to the club, almost every club in St. Louis has been one of our clients. It was looking at and how to make these clubs survive in the future. And that's where it was so much fun in the context of studying them, is that the clubs that did strategic planning survive, and the clubs that didn't are no longer here. And the clubs that survived are the ones that were innovative, built satellites in the St. Louis area. And we did that basically 20 years ago. The other clubs that did not are no longer here today, which is unfortunate. But that's kind of why we're here today, to talk about what do we have to do to make these clubs thrive in the future. You know, you look at the clubs, the City Club goes back to the 1800s, basically in England, where they were more of a social club as opposed to male social. And as they transpired and came over to the US, they basically became more of a business male club. Business was their main primary focus. And then they mutated basically into the club of we had probably in the 50s, 1950s and 60s, where they mixed business. Since women were very active in business and getting more so, they became members. So the male aspect fell away. And then the clubs have actually gone into even more adventure from the viewpoint as the cities reinvented themselves with residential constraints and things like that. Basically, the clubs had to embrace that too. So as times change, of course, so must clubs. And so much is dictated in clubs by their location. In serving the downtown areas, when you had business, it was fine. Like clubs like in Chicago, where the U Club there basically had to embrace the residential ingrowth of Chicago. And so as times change, people change, so much clubs change. And so holding on to outdated models, that's what happened in 5 of the 8 clubs that failed in St. Louis. They held on to outdated models. The 3 that didn't are thriving today. So we need a new approach to business and society, because that's what society is dictating, and that's what we're here to talk about. And looking at what drives success in clubs, I think it's important, as I said before, location is everything. And so we have found that in most of our city clubs in the downtown areas in our St. Louis market that prospered, at one time were no longer prospering. We moved satellites into the burbs, basically where their members were, and those clubs have successfully adjusted themselves to take that into account. And so the marketplace really dictates your offering. Let's have compelling members experience. There must be a reason to belong, more than just a business reason. It's a social organization, it's athletic, it's recreation. It becomes an integral part of your life. And the issue and the challenge, of course, is to be continually attracting that next generation of members, one way or the other, to get them into your club. And there's many ways to do that, but there's some interesting things that have been done around the country to make that happen. And that gets into the issue of making each club unique. And so if you want to attract that millennial generation, you have to do it with something that they treasure and value. And the Collective Club out in Seattle, that's a Club Corp club, has done that very successfully. Well worth every city club looking at that facility as how to address the millennial issue. Being in sync with society, obviously important, but we have found in every club that survived and has prospered, especially in the city club, if they've had a strategic plan, they follow the strategic plan, and they annually update it. So in prognostication for the future, where are we going? And what makes clubs successful? It's basically giving members what they want, where they want it. That's been this strategy of satellites, and that's why we've had them. Never had to close the downtown facility, but always have been able to expand the mission of the club in the burbs. We're readjusting to those changing demographics from an office environment downtown to a residential, to basically a lot of city clubs like the Briar Club in Houston, very much competing with the mainline country clubs now, having everything but golf and doing it very well. Looking at that next generation obviously is important with the Collective Club again in Seattle, and having that strategic plan to guide your future. What we see today is sort of interesting, and we're talking the post-COVID period. Someday I know it will be over. And we're not designing clubs for COVID. We're designing clubs for when we're through it. And there will be changes in our society that will probably be forever. The Zoom world is probably going to change things in unbelievable ways that we were talking about here in the office earlier. And that time-constrained society, well, we have plenty of time to play golf today. When we get back to normal, get ready, we'll probably be coming back to that old normal again. Health and wellness is very important today in all age groups. Changing roles of women, that has really developed, and especially as we take these clubs away from just being a business club only, she is very important as this can become a real substitute, and has in St. Louis, a real substitute for the country club. If you don't play golf, you might say there's not a whole lot of reason to be paying thousands of dollars every year for a golf course. The sense of community, very important, having good technology and communication. And obviously this last one was safety in the environment. The safety is very much in tune now with the COVID, that the club is a safe environment for us to be, but also the environment is embracing the collective world, the auto industry. Look what's happening there with electric cars and things like that. Clubs have a responsibility to give back also. When I go into a club and don't see what we call solar panels, I tell you, you're missing an opportunity. You need to look at something. Also, in looking at how we continually update that strategic plan, if you have one, almost all the clubs today do. I think it's between 75 and 80% of clubs have a strategic plan. The real issue here, of course, is a commitment from the board and management, basically to follow the plan, to annually refocus it, keeping it current, and for clubs basically to know what it takes to be successful, and not to be a club of yesteryear, because if you are and you're not changing, basically you're not going to be here in the future. So today we must know where we're going if we expect to get there. And that's what the strategic plan gives you, is that plan for the future. I love this old Japanese little saying here, I guess, testimonial of, planning without action is a daydream, thinking that, and action without planning is a nightmare. And so in that regard, you're going to hear a little later in the panel discussions that we have between the Union League with Jeff and the U Club with John, and the Jonathan Club with Matt, on some of the issues that the top managers in the country are dealing with, and they apply to all clubs, not just the large ones, but basically to the entire industry. These are the innovators in the industry, and it'll be fun to hear them. And so at this point, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Tom and Ted to talk about management and board synergy.
Thank you, Bill. I'm going to go for a couple of minutes and the importance of COO and board synergy, and then turn it over to Ted. The first slide I'd like to cover is communication. As tragic as the pandemic has been, it really has helped clubs remember that great organizations have great communication. And the 5 key conduits of communication that have been improved and need to stay steady and continue to improve are the GM to president, the GM to full board, the president and the board and the members, and the GM and the staff. Balance. There's always been a delicate balance of power and authority in clubs between the GM and the board, and it became even more crucial and critical during the pandemic. Finding and maintaining that balance is really one of the biggest challenges a GM has in their role. Another great thing coming out of the pandemic has been the refocusing of the board, the committees, and the general manager on the stewardship of the club, the sustainability of the club versus some of those non-essential agenda items that come up and suck up the time and energy of boards and general managers. Together, the COO and the board focus their skills on the most important things that will help the club sustain themselves. Planning, you have to have the everything in line, but if you're not planning and looking towards the future, you're going to have issues. You need a general manager that's innovative and agile, and then you need a board that's forward thinking. A strategy is about making tough choices, staying focused on your strengths, and what are the most promising opportunities ahead for your club. Effective strategies. Well, first you have to have a manager that brings the plan together, outlines the strategies and the action plans. Then you have to have a board and management come together to finalize the strategy. How do you do that? You do that by putting in the time and energies. It's a time-consuming process. You have to be committed to it. You have to practice patience. It takes time, it takes patience to move a strategic plan forward. Expect conflict. Be prepared as a manager and as a board president to manage the conflict that comes up during the strategy session. Be persistent. Keep pushing the project, keep pushing the plan forward. And last but not least, make the hard decisions. One of the things that's most important for a great GM and a great board and a great president is they can't be afraid to make tough decisions. Great clubs, great club leaders make the tough decisions to move the club forward. Now I'd like to turn things over to my friend and new teammate, Ted Galleri, our resident city and athletic club expert. Ted, take it away.
Thank you, Tom. Good afternoon. In my time in the club business, I have seen multiple economic downturns and a few black swans swoop in when least expected. Challenges are a normal course of life, especially so for city clubs. However, by being on the cutting edge of whatever society and the economy can throw at our clubs, the best city clubs have become resilient, agile, enterprising, and relevant. Before I address this slide, I want to reference two basic board duties and make a comment about executive committees. It is only when boards and management stay in their respective lanes that the board CEO partnership is effective. The white paper released by Club Benchmarking made excellent points. Two basic responsibilities of a board are duty of care that requires directors be diligent and deliberate in handling all club matters, and duty of loyalty that requires directors to look at the best interests of members and employees. And a comment about executive committees in the context of the first 2 points. Executive committees get their authority over an aspect of governance from the board. I bring this up because I recently have seen where an executive committee alone made policy decisions that had a long-term impact on the club's financial performance, which is of concern given COVID, the restrictions that COVID has already placed on these clubs. 2 points about the executive committees to keep in mind. The executive committee is not a surrogate of the board. The full board should affirm the committee's decisions. When the board and management unite in partnership, executing their responsibilities with all diligence, it is only then that their club is best served. In a recent survey of city athletic clubs, the focus was on identifying the strategies that clubs were deploying to keep members and staff engaged, and identifying strategies they were deploying to set themselves up for the future when they emerge on the other side of this pandemic. In a strategic sense, clubs are applying their strengths to weaknesses necessitated by the present situation, as well as applying strengths to create something new and to seize opportunities. What problems are they trying to solve? What opportunities are they trying to create? What are the strategies they are using, and what are the results? What does the data tell us? There are three basic problem categories that they're dealing with: membership, staff, and business activity. Each has its own subset of issues. Membership, declining through resignations. Members are transferring to non-resident. New members are joining the non-resident category. Older members are resigning due to relocating or for health reasons. In one of the bright spots in the last decade is older members were keeping their membership because of the healthy aspects of lively and engaged social activities. The staff, they're not actively engaged in club business. Skills are getting rusty and will need retraining when the club fully opens. Morale can be down, and many valued employees are facing financial hardship. On the business category, F&B revenues are down, contributing to operating losses. Private business is likely not coming back to pre-COVID levels for a while. Overnight room sales are down, one of the engines of great performance in the operating statement, and is certainly affecting financial performance. Creating membership value is the primary focus of managers. The social commerce of the club business has changed, and clubs are adjusting to the new reality. GMs are experimenting and trying a new stream of ideas, and what is important is that their boards are supportive. As you can see from the initiatives listed on this slide, covering everything from outdoor restaurants, food trucks as a la carte kitchens, virtual everything, meals to go, flower shops brought in-house, etc. Management is thinking out of the box. By doing so, membership engagement is being permanently redefined and will affect future strategic plans. City clubs are considered safe communities. Keep in mind, no one ever forgives an organization for an unsafe environment. City clubs are making sure safe is now becoming a competitive advantage. Club teams are learning new skills along the way, learning methodologies to brainstorm. They are acquiring new skills in how to design plans quickly and effectively, and most important, how to successfully execute those plans. Staff is performing in concert because they are aligned and focused on creating success. Clubs should capture this process and not let this skill fade when times improve. Clubs are caring for the staff across the country, providing millions of dollars in relief for their employees and demonstrating that when the employees hurt, the club cares. Communication has always been paramount, but now new ways of reaching members and employees are being deployed, and the use of new technology is greatly accelerated. Managers have taken advantage of the time afforded them by the pause in business as usual. They are using that time to think strategically about operations and the future. Remember, clubs pay GMs to think in the future. Developing new financial strategies are a must to provide needed cash to support staffing, invest in the property, and to prepare for reopening. Some clubs are using the opportunity that the economy has presented to purchase new property and acquire new assets, all aimed at growing in the future. And this takes us all the way back to where we started. The new ideas that are being conceived and implemented, and the creative power clubs are experiencing from alignment in their workforce, the CEO, the COO, and their board is the path for success in the future. This is a transformational time for clubs. The methods, facilities, and programs that brought success in the past will be different in the future. Crises aren't all bad. Crisis demands innovation. Innovation does lead to transformation. The groundwork for successful strategies in the future is being formed today. Mission-driven clubs will emerge from the crisis prepared to thrive. Mission-driven clubs make choices that look to the best interests of its members and staff. Thank you. Now I'd like to turn the presentation over to our good friend Ray Cronin of Club Benchmarking.
Thank you, Ted and Tom. I'm going to, not surprisingly, probably dig into the financial side of this. I think that, on the next slide, the kind of the theme, obviously, that came from Bill and Tom and Ted is relevance and building a club that's mission-centric or member experience-centric for the future. And when you look at the city/athletic club segment of our industry, it's about 7% or so of the clubs in the industry. We have 70 city clubs on this chart right here. The blue line shows operating revenue and the gold line shows capital income. And what we are doing is, if you look at the breakpoints on the blue line, 3.7 million, 5.7 million, and 12.3 million. And you look at it relative to the breakpoints above, which is basically the country club breakpoints. You notice that the smaller city clubs, the clubs on the left, are smaller than the smaller country clubs. That average city club is smaller in terms of revenue than the average country club. But interestingly, when you get to the large city/athletic clubs, they're actually larger than the large country clubs. As you can see, that upper quartile, 3 of those clubs are represented right here on this panel: Union League of Philly, University Club in New York, and the Jonathan Club out in LA. But when you think about it, those large city clubs, which probably are the clubs that had the more of the wherewithal to survive through the pandemic, they tend to be really large clubs. The smaller clubs, the smaller city athletic clubs, and I'm sure we have staff from those clubs on the webinar, those are the ones where we see potential risk, and I'll get into why. It's not just in this segment, even in the country club segment, it's the smaller clubs that are having the more difficult time with the pandemic and overall. And we can go to the next slide to start to dig into why. What we've discovered, and maybe if I haven't done as many webinars for city clubs, but you may have heard us saying this in the past, and I mean this literally, every single day, it just becomes clearer to me how important this is. But the key to sustainable financial success in a club over time is capital income and capital investment. We have a metric, we call it the net available capital ratio, which is essentially the earnings before depreciation. But that money does not come from the operating ledger. The operating ledger is essentially a break-even proposition. That money comes through capital income, of initiation fee income and/or capital dues or assessments. We believe that for a club, at the minimum, any club that has a ratio 10% or under, we refer to as capital starved. Any club that has a ratio of 20% or higher, we refer to as capital rich. And when you look at the breakpoints for city clubs, 5, 9, and 15, you got to go to the 60th percentile, which is where that circle is. So 6 out of 10, of the city clubs that we have in our database are not generating adequate capital. This is before the pandemic. And you can see that overall, the amount of capital that city clubs generate, it's a lot less than country clubs as you look at the ratios above. So if we go to the next slide, part of this is related to the initiation fee. And back to the theme, Tom, Ted, and Bill, this concept relevance is that we all talk about it in the industry, but I think it's kind of, from my standpoint, we got to embrace the word a little bit more emphatically or passionately. It's not a throwaway word. It's real. It really means something. Our club, as Bill said, has to be relevant in today's society. We at Club Benchmarking believe, I really think, there is a definitive quantitative measure of how relevant a club is, and that's the initiation fee. Ultimately, the initiation fee for a club is the market's assessment of the intersection of supply and demand. It's the classic first law of economics. The clubs that have a waiting list have very little supply and obviously more demand than they have supply. That's why they have a waiting list. Obviously, those are the clubs with the higher initiation fees. Some of these city clubs, as you know, could have 1,000, 1,500 members and may be populated, you know, even coming into the pandemic with half of that. So they have vast capacity. Obviously, they're going to have low initiation fees because they have greater supply than they have demand. So as most markets do, markets kind of figure this stuff out. And when you look at the initiation fee for city clubs, as you see on this chart, at the break points, the 25th percentile is $3,000, the median 7,500, and the 75th is 27,500. Up above shows that for country clubs. You can see it's great, it's vastly different, but it's the same story. Those larger city clubs are the ones with the higher initiation fees because they have relevant product or service offerings that they're in demand. So their initiation fee can go up. The clubs on the left, which tend to be the smaller clubs, frankly, to Bill's opening points, have a relevance problem. And the relevance problem manifests through the initiation fee. We go to the next slide, please. This just shows, you know, we have to keep this in mind. We have data now. We're up over 100 clubs that we've got data that closed 2020. You can see it in the data. We had a hypothesis that's bearing out. During the pandemic, clubs figure out, and this happens, as Ted said, Ted had a great statement about he's seen the black swan events and the normal ups and downs of the economy. Clubs do a very good job. The data shows it clearly of managing the operating ledger. So if the revenue declines, we're going to cut expenses. In this case, the government help with some grants and whatnot. But clubs, and the data we have for over 100 clubs now from last year shows clubs still broke even operationally during the pandemic. But where the risk lies for city clubs and for all clubs and for the smaller ones in particular, it's on the capital ledger. It's the fact that there's been too little capital income over time. We haven't had the money to reinvest in our services and amenities, i.e. we have a relevance problem, and we have a lot of deferred maintenance, so the club looks a little worn and tattered. It's the capital ledger that's the financial driver. We have to embrace that point. It sounds simple, but I can say very confidently from seeing it in so many club boardrooms, this is the issue. We're too focused on the operating ledger from a financial standpoint, and we're not focused enough on the capital ledger. And to do anything that we'll talk about in the panel shortly, or to enact some of the visionary type of thoughts that Ted and Bill put on the table in terms of the member experience, we need capital to do that. We have to get that capital from our current members, whether we have half as many as we need or as many as we need. Next slide, please. There is a metric. We can do it for every club in this webinar. We do it as a free service for the industry. The metric is the net worth over time. I'm not going to get into all the details, but this is a chart that shows over 800 clubs. We measure the compounded annual growth rate of members' equity since 2006. Half of the clubs in the industry are not keeping up with inflation in terms of members' equity. Members' equity is the most important financial metric, and it is the metric that is a leading indicator of a club's ability to meet its future capital needs, period. So every club on this webinar needs to know where they fall on this chart. It's a mandatory issue before taking any action. And then the final slide, please. I just, to reiterate some of these points, if you think in terms of sustainable financial success, and you think in terms of making the member experience relevant, capital is the fuel that drives that engine. It's capital, it's the capital plan, it's beginning to aggregate capital sooner rather than later. The longer we wait, the tougher it gets. Two metrics will manifest where you're at right now. The initiation fee and the members' net worth over time. Those are easily benchmarked to see where you fall, but they're critical pieces of the puzzle in terms of describing the future and taking actions that you may take, as Bill said at the outset. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to the roundtable.
Well, very good, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you very much for all of that. I hope you've all taken away some good thoughts today about a theme around relevance, clearly the member experience that we're going to offer at our clubs, the board and management partnership, and then really the financial structure and particularly that capital generation that makes a lot of it happen. Today, we're really pleased to be joined by three of the leading club executives in the country. As Ray characterized them from the financial metric, some of the largest clubs in the country, and might even look at them today and say they're all in the running that we might consider these, among the top, 3 or 4 clubs in the country of their style and type. Having been around for a while and happen to know these clubs and these managers for a while, not necessarily always the case, and so we want to bring them in today and give us some thoughts and how do we take those ideas of relevance and board leadership and financial management and bring it to life, because they've done it. The clubs are historic, they're legendary, and they are relevant today for what they do. But Jeff, I'd like to bring you in first. So we have Jeff Mcfadden from the Union League of Philadelphia. 20 years ago, you look at the Union League today, which sure, top club. It does have satellites, has a lot going on, as we've heard, but 20 years ago or so, about when you got there, you looked just as young as you did then. But club wasn't quite the case. So, I mean, what was your process and thought process? How do you move from a challenging time like we're in today, or like your club was at that point in time, and really bring it to life the way you have?
No, that's a good question. I think I was very fortunate, obviously, to get into a club that was struggling. I had terminal cancer, as I said often, and I was fortunate enough to get control of the boardroom. And our board went through the educational process, understanding a lot about governance, and they basically gave up on operation and management, right? So I didn't bring them that way. I just stumbled into that equation, which was the right equation. And I think, when I think about of being here, I always have an acronym, TP, right? You can't live without TP every day, but TP stands for time and perseverance. It takes a long time to grow these clubs and do the right thing. And I think a lot of us are under the impression that we can turn things around very quickly. And we have to make sure that our board and our governance folks understand that you need to have time and perseverance, even as you take quick action to build amenities and experiences and so forth. So, what we did at the league is certainly not overnight. It's been a 25-year process.
Well, I think it's a good point. I think a lot of people tend to, you talk about strategic planning and people think it's, point A to point B is a straight line. And actually there's a lot of, ups and downs in that line over that time as you move to make that happen.
And I think as managers, we all have to work hard at keeping our jobs that we currently have and stop moving between clubs, right? I mean, I think, we all want to be paid more, increase compensation. And I think that starts by making sure that all our board members and executive committee and the leaders of our clubs understand that you need time and you need that perseverance, as long as you're obviously taking action. Right.
What do you think? Relevance has been a big theme today. I mean, what do you see now? Kind of as you think about 2020 and process all that, and now we're thinking where we go from here. What are a couple of your top takeaways that you're noodling right now?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, we like to call it as A&E, amenities and experience. We're in the arts and entertainment business. Everyone, I'm sure, sees the Discovery Plus ads that have been, for the subscription for all their channels and how A&E is done. I think when we have to take a step back as an industry, especially on the city club side, we can no longer look at ourselves as golf clubs, country clubs, yacht clubs, social clubs. We have to look at ourselves as lifestyle clubs. And I think we have to move out of those silos and get into the amenities and experience business. And you're going to have small clubs, you're going to have medium-sized clubs, and you're going to have large clubs. You're not going to have clubs in silos based upon one activity, in my opinion. Now, I'll give you a good example. Within a couple of months, we're going to have 81 golf holes, but we're not in the golf business, right? We have the greatest, I think, white tablecloth restaurant in Philadelphia, but we're not in the fine dining business, right? We're solidly in the amenities and experience business. So I think as city clubs have a leg up because we can move into acquiring other amenities. And it could be small. It could be amenities that you can build inside your existing walls, or you can go out to a satellite suburban location. But we got to get out of the mindset that we're just a city club. We have to get in the mindset that we're a lifestyle club delivering arts and entertainment through amenities and experiences.
Wow, well said. Great point. Henry?
Yeah, and actually that ties in great. So I'm going to bring Matthew in on this, talking about these amenities and experiences. So Matthew, tell us some of the things that is happening out there at Jonathan Club that, you're doing differently now than you did before, and, maybe what you will continue to do or what you won't continue to do, and how you're, serving your members there.
Well, thank you, Henry. Thank you, everybody. I think going along with what Jeff said, the operative word for us over the last few years has been lifestyle, and how do we bring that Jonathan lifestyle to our members, and what components of the way they live their lives can we adopt and make our own. And if you keep your mind open, you can take anything from, what does a hospital provide? What does a wellness center provide? What does a golf club provide? All of those sorts of things. And of course, I'm not going to go too much into it, Henry, but the most recent things are obviously these to-go programs, that all of us have instituted. And our goal was to look at the best that were being done within the city, take those models, and within 2 weeks try to replicate that. And we're now 10 months in. I think we've served 600,000 meals in the last 10 months off property. And it's something that we'll continue with. Ease of use, our app reservations program, which was used by 35% of our membership 9 months ago, is now used by 97% of our members, making reservations, ordering food, all of those. Again, that convenience piece. For us, the last 6 months is really looking at COVID as this accelerant. What's coming out of this? How can we leverage this? I think that the two real key, I think for any club, I think at least, the thing that's come out of this is our members need us for the first time. They actually talk about us as if they need us. They value us a little bit more. And also they value the safety that we represent. We're terribly excited about the unfortunate nature of what our downtown will look like when we do open back up. We're still going to have homeless issues, more so than we had 10 months ago. There are going to be safety issues. There's going to be a lack of restaurant dining. There's going to be a lack, we think, of places that feel safe. So how can we take something that maybe was 2 or 3 years away? A simple thing would be dress code, and how can we accelerate through this? So we're basically using COVID, we're doing a post-COVID fully casual club. Now, I can probably admit to you that dress code relaxation of it, complete relaxation of it, will probably continue for the rest of our history. It's done. So we've used this. And now, of course, as we look at a lot of our capital projects, we look at a lobby renovation or a lighting renovation. We say, okay, it was great if everyone looked like John Dorman, but what if they look like Jeff? Young, vibrant, they can see things. How do they want to feel when they come into the club? So how do we move from really a traditional environment to a traditional environment that doesn't make someone like a Jeff, dressed the way he is, feel uncomfortable when he walks in? And so rather than having a Brooks Brothers downstairs, maybe we need a small cafe where a member can grab a cup of coffee, meet a friend in the lobby, which in most city clubs, the lobby has always been that transitional place. You come in, people say, are you a member? Make you feel very uncomfortable, and then could kick you off to these hidden rooms. but can we take that centralized area as being kind of a welcoming spot? Like when you go into most 5-star hotels, you walk in there and there's people, they're sitting around, there's vibrancy, there's activity. We want our members to feel that, but also non-members, because we're looking to accelerate our growth. You know, we have a number of initiatives that we're launching that we think really there's a lot of opportunity there. And I'll just go back to someone who was talking, I think Ted was talking about executive committees. We actually used the virtual arena as we have a 6-year governance plan. We actually got rid of the executive committee. I never saw the point of it. I didn't think that some small group of the board should have say over and well, in case something comes up. So we actually, again, use this to finally get rid of the executive committee. You know, there's not a thing that can come up now that you cannot communicate with the whole board immediately. And again, that's, you know, the use of this, this sort of thing we're doing right now virtually. And we're going to go to 4 board meetings, you know, in-person board meetings a year. Focus on 4 key arenas in our club, but every other board meeting now will be virtual.
Yeah, well, that's good to take that opportunity. I know our associate Chris Coulter always calls it, you know, under the cover of COVID, you know, you can make some things happen that maybe would have taken you years to get them done. John, I was in New York City last week. I must say it was a little bit depressing. Certainly a different place, right? What's happening in your world?
So, you know, it's interestingly, you know, the 3 managers you have on the panel, each of our cities are really frozen in time for a moment, right? And I'll call it a moment, but it's been more than a moment in our lives, but it's going to be a moment. Philadelphia is pretty much shut down. LA's been shut down. New York has been shut down. And we're all going to be depending upon some great leadership, external leadership in governance to grow the cities back, right? We want to support that, but we're going to need some external leadership also. Frankly, the cities are going to have to open up and become safer, places where members want to congregate again, where people want to live. And I truly believe that's going to happen. But right now, yeah, the city is not as busy as we'd like it to be. There's not enough people around. Our members have been dispersed, like the members of all of our larger city clubs. They're living in different areas, and what we've done is make sure we engage them now, because they're going to come back. I truly believe they will be back one way or another. Living in a big city with all the cultural opportunities is very different than living separately in a suburb or a rural area. Certainly, the opportunities for us and for the other clubs here with our overnight rooms, that also lends itself to those members, the non-resident membership, coming back and being a part of the club when they're in the city. You know, really bringing to the forefront what they may not feel for a while everywhere else. And it sounds like we're all doing it. We want to be safe and secure. So when you're in your clubhouse, that club is not just sanitized. It looks and feels, and people know that they're in a way they're not being exposed. But as we get through this, that cleanliness has to stay with us. The safety of being in your club. Why would you dine in a restaurant if you can dine in your club and get the same quality cuisine and service? Why would you stay in a hotel when you can get the same or better quality cuisine and service? I think it's very much similar to what we've heard. It's about value, and value isn't about money. Value is, you know, about really the experience and the engagement, and not just dollars. And our goal is really to take that to level with our members so that they feel the value. In these past few months, we've engaged members with even more events than we have when the clubhouse is fully open. We have events almost every day, and we've seen that as what the future will bring. Our non-resident membership, Ted spoke about members going to non-resident membership. It's no secret that a lot of people have migrated, and maybe they'll migrate back. But in the meantime, we're bringing the club to them. Everybody on this panel is bringing the club to those members. So we're going to hold our events in on property and virtually. So there'll be a lot of hybrid events even when we come out of this. And why? Well, because those non-resident members really, they walked away with a love and loyalty for the club, and we want to grow that, and we think there's a real opportunity for that. So most of our events now, whether there be a great speaker that would put 400 or 500 people in a room, they may put 400 or 500 people in a room, another 300 or 400 or 500 on a webinar or a video like this. We see that as great opportunities. So that there are real things that are going to be happening. We're going to, outdoor dining is probably here to stay. I think people enjoyed it. It's not new. I mean, city clubs have been looking at that for probably the past 10 years. And every club here and many of the clubs have an outdoor dining venue. We've expanded ours to a degree, and frankly, next year, I'm confident, even though our main dining room, which can seat 350 people, our terraces are going to be open. People want to sit outside when the weather's proper, and we're going to find a way to make it very comfortable for them with great food and services outside. There are things happening. We think we're going to get non-residents to come into our club. We've built some business offices to allow them to come to the club for the day, do some work in the city. Broadway's going to reopen. The museums are going to reopen. The city's going to come back. It's just going to take a little time. So we're budgeting our mind that it'll take some time for the vaccine to take hold. But I believe next fall we're going to be in a trending, a really nice trend upwards. I truly believe that.
Well, I think there's a real opportunity with that. If we think back to what city clubs were formed to do, there wasn't all this competition and all these other outlets in these cities, and they were the safe place. They were a hotel when hotels didn't exist on every corner as they do today. And in a way, you're gonna have an opportunity to leverage that difference again as as it takes other commercial activities to get back up and running. But Henry.
Yeah, and this might be, sort of a quick question for all three of you is, John, you're talking about the membership, people going to non-resident, status. How are each of you handling, that? Are you seeing the losses just overall in membership? Have you had to expand your categories? Was there a limit on your non-resident, categories? Are you looking at expanding that? And then what are you looking to do to recruit members that, that you've lost or have gone to a lesser category? We'll go Jeff, Matthew, and then John.
Well, obviously our membership has grown this past year because of our golf products, right? And our move into this regionalism of a club versus just being a center city club. So we're fortunate in that regard. And one of the secrets that we have in dealing with buying as a city club, buying a golf product or buying any sort of product, we're able to basically grow our membership with not just golfers, but increase regular, say, city club members who now have additional access and value of getting access to that additional amenity, additional location. So, for example, on Tarsdale, we brought in 400 golf members and we brought in 500 additional regular members. Our next product is going to be 500 golf members and 500 additional members. So we continue to grow by expanding the amenity. And it goes back to that theory that I had, that clubs have become very expensive to operate, right? 100 years ago, any Tom, Dick, Harry, Sally could have started a private club, right? But today, clubs are so expensive to run. So you have to raise dues, right? Just to pay for the basic services, as Ray pointed out on the operating ledger. And now it's almost like a catch-22. You have to add amenities to continue to get growth, to continue to justify the dues that you have to charge for the underlying cost of the business. So that's our philosophy. So we've been able to grow. As it relates to non-resident members, it was pretty genius of us about 10 years ago. We got rid of the non-resident category. We found that with the internet and the evolution of bill paying over electronically, that people gave us their Ocean Reef address. They just forgot to give us their Villanova address as a non-resident. So we eliminated that category. And ironically, the data now shows that we actually bring in more folks who would have qualified as a non-resident, even though we don't have a non-resident category. Go figure that out.
Okay.
Outstanding. Thank you. I love the Villanova reference whenever you can put that in, Jeff. So thank you for that. Matthew, what are you guys looking at?
Well, I think we're opposite, Jeff. We actually look at non-resident as an incredible opportunity for us. We have, LA, everyone thinks of LA, they kind of Palm Springs is part of it, Orange County is part of it, but people are very much landlocked. So we're on a desert initiative right now. We have an amazing amount of clubs that have grown up down there. I think people are getting more used to maybe making that a year round or at least 9 months of their time down in that area. And so we're looking at partnerships down there, but not the reciprocal partnerships. We feel that, you know, $65 million later in our facilities, we're not to, just because you're an hour and a half away, kind of say, well, you know, we need that reciprocity. Reciprocity with John's members, with Jeff, that's great. That's what I call, you know, the old type of non-resident member partnership. But we really see an opportunity for growth. As people now are maybe staying around a little bit longer, they still want to come in, as John said, to, you know, to maybe for business, or for us, we think it's more to go to the music center, go to the world champion Lakers or the world champion Dodgers. I mean, of course, what an amazing place to be. I mean, it is the champion city, as we call it right now, Jeff. So we really look at that area. We're looking over the next 3 years to grow our non-resident by close to 500 new memberships. And as I said, this was going to begin last year, but luckily the COVID came along, and we now have not only been able to progress forward with this, but also develop this, you know, our virtual event programs. I mean, my current non-resident members have been calling me and saying they've never felt so connected to the club. And these are people that I expected, you know, when I looked at the overall financial impact of COVID in March, I actually thought would leave the club. But they are more engaged than ever before, because they said, you know, 3-4 times a week, you come to me. I get a wine program, I get a great speaker series, I get to meet an author. You know, I watch Ina Garten cook in your kitchen. You know, we have Olympic athletes in here, you know, talking about, you know, upcoming events. And so they love it. And everyone's staying at home anyway. So, you know, the value proposition to me, I look at, what do people pay for DirecTV? What do they pay for those programs? Let's become part of that. Let's become a subscription service, which also works into the dues.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say, I completely agree when you think about how we work toward our non-resident membership and how they've really become more engaged. It's been amazing for us. We've kind of said the same thing. You know, they were not the forgotten tribe, but they are now really coming to the forefront, and it's a way we're going to grow membership. I think one thing that's important, and Jeff said, you know, he's grown membership, and I can understand that with golf products. But luckily, I think many of the city clubs have not been, you know, overrun with the exodus of members. It's a little more than usual, but it's not something where, you know, it's a knock on wood, not something where you'd say, wow, these clubs are never going to survive. I think these clubs, the members have shown loyalty and have paid their dues and want to stay. So we haven't lost significantly more than we do through normal attrition. We've lost a few more. The biggest challenge that I've seen is the growing of new members during this period of a clubhouse being somewhat open or partially open. And that's the big address for us. And, you know, we're going to remain traditional, that we're going to go through a full admissions process, which these other clubs do also. So it's going to take some work through members, showing them the value of not only being a member, but the reality of the steward. A good steward grows membership. And if you're going to be a steward of your club and you want it to grow and be successful, you have to grow membership. So we're going to have an opportunity there. And I completely agree with Matt. The non-resident membership for us is going to be very important. The embrace has been amazing, and we've had a non-resident committee that we've worked with for years, and that committee now has become so important. Not only do, you know, think about this, not only do we present events to them, but they are an outreach for us, because the speaker is not here. They get a speaker where they are that can speak to our members around the world. You know, we had a great speaker from DC. I won't go through all of that, but we had a great speaker from DC. Well, that person did not have to come to New York City to speak. They spoke in their office, and they spoke to, you know, 300 of our members. So those things are great opportunities for us also. You know, we always try to say, if you're not in the clubhouse, we're not really treating you the same way. We want you to come in for dinner when you come for something. We want you to come in for this. Now we're saying, no, we just want you to be a part of the club, and how can we maintain that relationship? And I can tell you, it's been working very well. And I think post-COVID, it's going to stay with us. You know, it's going to just continue with us for quite some time. So
Also,
I know you're going to get short, so I got to
get outside our walls, right? And technology is helping you do that. Jeff's done that with some regionalization. Matthew has a couple locations, but it really sounds like you need to work your technology angle to have that communications, have that bandwidth, and then really, I think for a long time, a lot of our clubs, that was we had websites, we had that information, but not making it wasn't core, it wasn't integral what we're doing. It really sounds like it's got to be a big piece going forward.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. This was very interesting and great to hear everything that's happening at your clubs in 3 different cities on different parts of the country. And now we've got about 5 minutes left. I'd like to bring in all of our panelists and presenters for a Q&A. And again, if you have a question that you'd like to ask anybody who's presented today, please submit it in the question box. And if you want to direct it to somebody specifically, please do that. Otherwise, we can parse it out. I did see that we do have one question. If somebody asks if we can get a copy of the slides, absolutely. We will be sending out the slides and a copy of the recording to all that registered. I think that will come out potentially tomorrow, but if not, very first part of next week, so that you will see those. So I'll go to Bill Senior on this one, just more for me. After hearing what Jeff and Matthew and John, talked about what they're doing at their clubs, how can you see, clubs of all sizes? We talk about them being, some of the largest in the country. How can you see clubs of, medium size or smaller size doing, what they're doing to help themselves, who may not have, all their resources?
Well, Henry, that's a good question. In fact, I have 2 of those clubs I'm working with right now that are on top of office buildings around the country. Primarily dining clubs, some maybe some minor fitness, and obviously very much struggling during this period. And the issue there, of course, gets into it. And I think you have to look like what Jeff did and like what my clubs did here in St. Louis with MAC and St. Louis Club and Racket, is they're going to have to branch out and become more than a dining club in their downtown areas on top of these high-rise buildings. They're not going to survive because the business market is really going to change. The idea in the old days, those clubs were built for luncheon clubs, but Dedman did that with Club Corp, and that's no longer the way we use them. And so they're going to have to be looking at either associating with country clubs or doing what Jeff did, is branching out and putting satellite facilities that don't have to be big, but they're going to have a presence out where people are actually living and working, as opposed into those downtown areas. That's the only way those clubs are going to survive, in my opinion. They're not going to survive in that old model on top of an office building. They may keep that, like we found in St. Louis. We could keep those buildings, like the St. Louis Club here keeps its facility in downtown Clayton, which is a very vibrant community. But its association with a big fitness club and St. Albans Country Club has been extremely important for their success. And so it was an association. It wasn't necessarily a purchase, which gets expensive. You're just going to have to be innovative and think it out, but you're going to have to bring a new club product out to where your members are, as opposed to trying to make it in that old location with that old model.
And I think there's never a better time to do that now. Think about the amount of money that's being printed in this country, right? COVID, people are buying hard assets. Hotels are being sold for 40 cents on the dollar. Golf courses are not, of course, because everyone's golfing. Ray talks, that Monterey Peninsula study is brilliant, right? The principles behind the Monterey Peninsula is brilliant. But that's if you have a Lamborghini already, right? That's sort of changing the gas, changing the tires, having the principles. What if you don't have a Lamborghini? Say you're a small, struggling city club. What do you do now? What's your, what can you do behind the principles? And I'm thinking, you got to go out and borrow debt. There's no doubt about it. I've seen a few clubs go under because they had too much debt, but I've seen a hell of a lot of clubs go under because they're capital starved. They haven't borrowed enough, haven't put enough back into their club. And if there's an excuse with COVID, it's time is to do it now, is to go out and reimagine what your club can do, what additional amenities you can bring, and borrow the money to do it. There's no problem with amortizing new buildings, new land, new concepts over 25 years. If you're redecorating carpet and drapes, well, then you got, if you're amortizing that longer than 8 to 10 years, then you got problems. But there's no problem taking on long-term debt for 25 years if you're adding an amenity that's going to last multiple generations.
You know, the other thing, or Jeff, that's important we've seen too, and when we did it in the past here, is you can pick up facilities. In St. Louis, we picked up these indoor tennis clubs that kind of went out of practice, went out of vogue. And we've got those for nickels on the dime, or 10 cents on the dollar, let's say. So if you're smart in each of your areas, you'll find assets that are undervalued that you could expand. Just like the other big thing is too, like that collective out in Seattle. That is, every city club should basically have a collective type of thing to appeal to that millennial. And what it is, they've got the typical computers and the billiard room and all that, but they also have the nets, they have the walls you climb, I guess, when you go crazy, and the kids love it. I say kids, I have a daughter who's 40, who's a kid, but you're going to have to expand in and get those people to accept City Club as not a foreign subject, but something that is integral that they can build their life around.
All right, and we've got time for one more question, and this was for both Matthew and John. Basically wondering, what type of ongoing events are you having now? John, you mentioned you're having events nearly daily, and how do you find that they are captivating members as well as potential members? And thank you very much for the webinar. So John first, and then Matthew.
Yeah, so obviously getting great speakers is very helpful, and we do that. We've got lecture committees that help us get speakers. We also have outreach. We do cheese tastings where we send the cheese, and in New York, it's illegal. It was illegal to sell beverages, alcoholic beverages, through your retail license, but during COVID, you're able to do that. So we send beverages to people's homes, and we do wine tastings, quite a few of these at people's homes, and they are engaging. When you are in someone's home, there's somebody with them. It's a little different than their family's there, their guests are there. So like I have a cheese tasting tonight. There'll be maybe 40 members and 40 other people with them in their home, and I call those people potential members. And I'm now socializing with my committees that every time we have an event, we should be having our members invite potential members as a guest, so they can see with the benefit of the university club. If they're in Carolina or Arizona, they can say, "Wow, if I was a member of the university, I can see these all the time." And so we're doing that, and we're going to find, I believe we're going to grow membership in some ways through that outreach. There's a lot of events that we're doing, and Matthew has been terrific about this. So Matthew, why don't you grab it?
Well, I think just, a lot of the traditional events, as you said, speakers, wine tastings, liquor tastings, we actually expand that into the outside world. Our catering team now has 5 or 6 programs. Tomorrow night, I have 200 executives with Citibank doing a tasting with my mixologist, and he's making 3 drinks with them. We actually, labeled the bottles that we sent to them with their logo on it, blah, blah, blah. But as John said, I've now got 200 potential members. They're going to see the value of a 3-person mixology team that we think is better than anyone in the country, and they can come and experience it in person. So that was a nice offshoot. And then, what we do, we look at every age group. We have every Friday night, we have a club DJ playing on a rooftop, either here at the beach. People can send in requests. They go from light listening. We do a Neil Diamond night to kind of, for our younger members, we do a rave party. We kind of do a liquor bladder, a 2-liter liquor bladder, send it to their home and say, get out of control and listen to the DJ. Starts at 10 p.m. We have kid readings. We have a lot of books for children. Normally Meet the Authors were kind of for the older generation. We now have it for kids. Trivia nights, You've Got Talent, comedy nights, and it's amazing. We have a comedian coming up next week, and I was a little bit of, what happens? We put it online, and we got 300 reservations. So we'll probably have 500 people. We'll do a meal to go with this. We are getting it a lot of our major events. We're having people take pictures of them enjoying something, a virtual event. The one thing I would tell everybody is, do not let your members forget COVID-19. Take pictures, put it up there, remind them how amazing you are as general managers and how you pivoted, did these amazing things when the whole world around them was falling to pieces. Your government was falling to pieces, your city leadership was falling to pieces, and look at what we did as clubs. And we're generating these huge posters with 60 to 200 pictures on it, and they're going to be front and center in our clubhouse when you walk in. For the next 5 years, I want everyone to remember what this club did during COVID. There is the value, and that's what's going to sell memberships.
Absolutely, Matthew. That's a great comment, and I think a great way to end this. I'd like to thank everybody, Frank and Bill, Jeff, Matthew, John, Tom, Ted, and Ray for presenting. I know that the nearly 150, 160 attendees that I think we had on here, is able to take something away from this, and that's the purpose of this. And so I'm glad. I appreciate the Club Leadership Alliance asking me to moderate this, and hope that everybody can take something from this, and the private club industry can be stronger as we move to a post-pandemic world. So thank everybody for participating, and thank all of y'all for presenting. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.